time when most students in UK hospitality schools are from overseas, one talented revenue manager is making it her mission to do what she can to help immigrants with integration into the UK. Big welcome to the show to Omoyeni. How are you, Omoyeni?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Jason?
Yeah, fantastic. Well, better than the weather today because it's absolutely bouncing down with rain in the north, isn't it?
Yeah, it is every time.
So yeah, thank you so much for giving up your time to come on the show. You and I have known each other for quite some time. Um, I've become more aware of you recently, let's say, from your posts on LinkedIn and how you're kind of making it your mission to help immigrants settle in the UK, which I think is commendable and absolutely in line with our values at Edwards and Finn as well. So I was keen to get you on this show to chat about it. But before we get into that, tell us your journey, tell us your story then.
I came to the UK, in January 2021. I remember that day very vividly. And the reason why I obviously came to the UK was because I come from a very large family back in Nigeria. And everybody was at a point whereby they were all traveling to do their masters abroad. And I didn't want to feel like an outcast. Because I didn't want to leave Nigeria. Nigeria is a nice place to be fair. I didn't want to leave Nigeria, but there was so much pressure back home to leave the country. And I didn't want to feel like, an outcast later in the future. So I decided to, okay, let's just try the UK. It wasn't my first plan. Canada was my first option. So I came to the UK and then did my master's in business analytics. And I found myself here somehow. The day I landed in the UK, I remember I looked at myself in the mirror and I was crying. I'm like, oh my God, now I'm definitely alone. And since then, it's been a crazy, crazy, crazy journey. And through those experiences, the highs, the lows, the in-betweens, I realized that so many people are coming to the UK now and they feel like they're alone. So that's why I'm using my LinkedIn platform to tell people that no matter what you're going through, somebody has been through worse and the person has moved on from it. So pick up yourself and keep going, really.
So you literally stuck a pin in a map and said, "Hey, yeah, it's the UK, this small island miles from Nigeria, and that's where I'm gonna
Yeah.
relocate to."
Yeah, I actually, because I've been to the UK a couple of times for holiday.
Okay.
I've been, but I never just saw myself living in the UK. There's a difference between visiting and actually living in the country. But at the time, when I applied to schools in the UK, I got accepted to every school I applied to. So I just said, okay, it looks like the UK will be an easier journey for me. I think the UK is calling me. Uh, and then I found myself here. Yeah. Really, it's not too, I think it was a good decision. Mm.
I, I think most of us would be aware that integration into a foreign country it will be difficult. Tell us in practical terms, like some of the difficulties you had when you came over for the, well, not for the first time, 'cause you've been on holiday, but tell us about the difficulties you had integrating into the UK.
Oh God. The cultural shock first. Before I even got into the employment world, because I came to the UK during the pandemic, and as you know, everywhere was on lockdown. There was not a lot of social interactions. So at that point, Grey Anatomy was my best friend. I was just in the room watching Grey's Anatomy. I think in my next world, I'd have definitely been a doctor. So, and and then I came out of that into the world when the world started coming back open, and I realized that I needed to say please a lot, say thank you a lot, say sorry a lot. Like, why do I have to do that? So I remember sometimes when I have to, before I go into the bus, I rehearse the conversation I'm going to have with the bus driver. Before I come down from the bus, I have to like rehearse again what I'm going to say to the bus driver. Always say please, always say thank you, always say sorry. Oh my God, it was a lot to deal with. And that was one phase. That was one phase. And then when I got into the corporate world as well, it was entirely different. People were asking me how was my weekend. I was like, what's your business? In my mind, I was like, what's your business with my weekend? But I had to learn that it was just the culture. People just cared about how you were doing, going for coffee chats. It was such a weird environment. But there's one thing I've learned in my migration journey is that you have to unlearn and relearn. That's just it. Yeah. I'm still navigating through it though. Yeah.
I love the story about you rehearsing what to say to the bus driver when you got on the bus every morning. And it is totally British, isn't it? That propensity to apologize for everything when it's not your fault as well.
Yeah.
You bump into someone in the street and it's not your fault, and we all say sorry. It's like,
Yeah.
why did I just say
Like,
sorry?
yes, yes. People were really, I don't know if it's a Manchester thing or is that, it's like British culture, but people were genuinely nice when I got to Manchester. People were very friendly, they're very approachable. It was nice to see because in Nigeria, not to demonize the culture, but in Nigeria, there's this, you have to be guarded. So we're not very open to strangers because there's a culture that everybody might be out to get you. So when you're in an environment whereby everybody's very friendly, very polite, you're like, what's going on here? This is so strange. But it's very important. Navigating through those cultural differences is very, very key in the journey, really.
That's so interesting. What it must have been difficult. Did you know anyone in the UK when you came over? Or
Oh,
you knew absolutely no one? It must have been quite a lonely time for you.
it was really lonely. I was depressed at some point. I did have an uncle back in London, but at that time, we were not close like we are now. So I would say at that time I didn't have anyone, even though I did have someone. I didn't have anyone, and I was depressed. I remember, and because I was in my hostel at that time, my dorm, because of the pandemic, all my other flatmates couldn't be, so it was just me in the flat for a long period of time. As I said, Grey's Anatomy was my best friend. And I remember one day I just went to the kitchen and I cut off my hair. And that's when I realized that something is wrong with you here. How can you just wake up in the morning and chop your hair off? And that's when I realized that I was facing chronic depression. And there's
Wow.
so many people out there as well that they've come to the country and because of the cultural differences, some people don't even have they can't even hold a conversation with other people because they feel like they are being judged for the way they are talk. We talk differently. I've lived in Nigeria all my life. My accent is definitely different. But when you feel like you have to change the way you talk, rehearse the way you talk, before you approach someone, it causes depression, honestly. Yeah.
How did you pull yourself out of that?
Mm, I think I'm still, I would say, um, it was the words of Oprah. Oprah Winfrey, she's one of my silent mentors. I watch a lot of her videos and her talk shows. And I remember watching one time, and it was about finding beauty within yourself. And I had like an epiphany and like, okay. And I had like I meditated on that video I watched and I realized that I'm different, yes, 100%. If I walk into the room, I would be different. And when I started embracing my differences, I began to find inner peace. And I started finding that what makes me beautiful is being different.
Hmm.
And that's why I'm preaching to people now. You're different, yes. You don't have to conform to the society, what the world wants you to, look like, be like, talk like, feel like. Be who you are. It's just one person. You're the only person like you in this world. That's what makes you unique. That's what makes you beautiful. That's what makes you stand out. And that's what's going to give you all the opportunities in this world that you crave. If only you accept yourself, really. Yeah.
You certainly have resilience and tenacity in bucket loads, and it comes out certainly with your LinkedIn posts and what you're trying to do at the minute. And I can now see what lit that fire within you to help other immigrants coming into the UK that may be struggling to settle.
Yeah.
Tell me about how you're going about that. What's your mission? What's your goal with this? What action are you taking to help people like you?
Honestly, if I tell you I have a goal, I'm not sure I do. But I'm a very spiritual person, you know. I have a very strong faith, and in my faith, I found that, when in my faith in meditating, I found that I felt like I had a calling. I don't know if that's what you call it. I felt like I had a calling
Yeah.
to help people that are just like me, people that are facing, struggles like I did, and I didn't know how to do it. At first, when I came in, at the beginning of the year, I was talking to my friend that should we start up a charity whereby we help people settle in the country? We started that, and then life happened, and we couldn't do that. We paused that. And sometime in September, I just had like a very strong feeling. I don't know how to explain it, but I had a very strong feeling that I needed to revamp my LinkedIn and use that platform to speak my truth. And that was how I started. I honestly don't know what's going to come out of it, but my goal at the end of the day is that to make sure that people don't give up on their dreams because they had to come to a foreign country. Because the next generation is dependent on the decisions we make today. That's
Yeah, and it's what's been the response since you changed your profile and started putting out these messages of hope?
Honestly, it's been very overwhelming. The support has been great. You're one of my supporters, and I'm very thankful for that.
I'm your biggest supporter.
Yeah, the support has been great, and people call me and they send me so many messages and say, "Thank you so much for doing this. Keep doing it." It's good to hear that I'm not alone in this. Because people feel like they're alone. They're the only ones going through that moment. Everybody came here and it was just easy because social media, we tend to put the best version of ourselves online.
Yes.
But what I'm doing is putting my worst versions, the good, the high, all my experiences, and putting it all out there. It's very scary, trust me. Every time I want to press the send button, I'm panicking.
Yeah.
But I do it all the same. Yeah.
And you put out a very profound post within the last couple of weeks, which I read, which was really a sad but also full of hope as well, about when you were scammed. For people that have not seen it on LinkedIn, you were scammed out of most of your life savings, and that was sad to read, but also inspirational because it documented how you recovered from that as well.
Yes, it was a very hard time. Honestly, I had a mental breakdown. It was really tough because when there's another thing as well is that when if this happened to me in Nigeria, I would have been surprised. But as immigrants, when we come here, we think because it's a developed country, we don't expect all those kind of things that we had back home to happen in a country that that is so developed. But there's crime everywhere, honestly.
Yeah.
There's fraud everywhere. So I remember my friends called me because they didn't know about it. Some of my friends didn't know about it. And they called me after they saw my post and they said, "When did this happen?" I said, "Oh, that was a while back." And I said, I didn't tell them. I said, yes, but you're reading it now. And I said, so scams happen in this country? I said, yes. So that's how much you see that people that migrate don't expect that, those kind of situations happen, but they do happen. They do happen.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And all power to you for publicizing it on LinkedIn. And I saw it had some great interaction. Obviously, it touched people. The post touched people in the way that it was written, and the story itself was like profound. So, but you're working in hospitality now as revenue manager for Awaze.
Yeah.
What more could UK hospitality institutions, hotels, and the like do to help immigrants integrate into the UK? Is enough being done, do you think?
Yeah, it is. It's very daunting, but the first thing was be culture. Workplace culture is very key.
Yeah.
When you have a culture whereby everybody's valued, everybody's included, and there's equality. Many people talk about diversity and equality, but not everybody practices it. There's a difference to put it on your website and say one of your values are inclusion, but it's a different thing when the company actually practices inclusion. So I would say that the one thing that they can do is create an environment whereby people don't have to feel like they have to be different people to fit into the culture. That was one thing that I felt like I had at Awaze. It was a culture whereby everyone felt like they're seen. It was that's one, I think true. I'm very glad I started my career in the UK there as well, because it was an inclusive culture. Everybody's voice, no matter who you are, your voice is heard. And I think that's one thing as well, like in the hospitality industry, that they can do to help immigrants settle. Not forgetting that immigrants are very resilient, very determined people. You can't go wrong when you have a good one on your team.
How much more difficult is all these things, is integration and inclusion in a world where, certainly in revenue management, many work at least part of the time remotely? Does that make it more difficult?
Yes, 100% yes. Interactions for me, I like hybrid, because honestly, I like to dress up. So I feel like I used to tell my friends I need to take my clothes out. So I think human interacting, having social interactions with people does help. Does help a lot, a whole lot, which is good. But some people, sometimes too, when your colleagues at work are not the best, you just want to be on your own. You prefer remote working. So I think it depends on the company.
Yeah.
It's a culture to culture thing, I think, yeah.
Yeah. And Awaze have obviously you speak very highly of Awaze. They've also offered you sponsorship, I believe, to remain in the UK.
Yeah.
And this, as you know, and we've discussed it before, is an issue. Hospitality is crying out for more staff. And if you speak to certainly the unis that we're affiliated with, I do guest lecturing at Oxford Brookes and also at University of West London. Those universities, and I guess this is replicated over other universities, but 80–90% of their students are from overseas.
Yeah.
So we've got a big issue in this country, as I see it, and I know you do, where these students will graduate and then they'll work on a post-graduation visa. And at the end of that, it's just time to go home or seek employment outside the UK. So as a country, we're not really helping ourselves. I think work needs to be done to demystify sponsorship, because sponsorship happens sometimes at higher levels, director levels, but on the ground level, a more junior revenue exec or revenue analyst, great on Awaze for sponsoring you, but not many companies out there do it. So we're in a situation really where we're educating people in hospitality, and then they're floating away, to back home or to other countries. What are your thoughts on that, Omoyeni?
I think the press hasn't done anything to help as well. There's too much bad press out there as regards to immigrants coming to the UK. So sometimes companies, because of bad press, sometimes companies, they don't want to associate with us immigrants because of the bad press that's out there. And the thing about it is that where there's bad is good. That's just how life is. It's finding the balance, really. Because if you have, for instance, if there's obviously a lack, there's obviously an employment problem in the UK, which is why the government created all this platform, all these routes for people to come and boost the economy of the country. And if we as a corporation, or as an industry, we don't come together and take opportunities from those things that the government has put in place, in the long run it creates a problem. So because I always say it's not expensive. Companies can afford it. They can afford it. And there are even some routes whereby the employee bears the cost as well, not the company. So because the cost of if you hire an immigrant, for instance, and you give the immigrant a 5-year sponsorship visa, that person will grow within the company. The person will grow, and the person will be so skilled. That's a long-term employee. Versus if you employ somebody that is not an immigrant, that is a citizen of the country, the person has an open right to work, can work anywhere. The chances that person will remain with you longer is the percentage is lesser than if you had an
Yeah.
immigrant. So by employing immigrants, you have a long-term employee who will grow. And because we have this thing in us that we have something to prove, not just to ourselves, to our family back home in our own country, and to the world at large. So we tend to do things a little bit extra. We give it a 200% every time. So if companies could just, take advantage of that, it will be life-changing, because this is something that because I came from a background in accounting, and this is something that accounting firms have been able to see, and they've taken advantage of this opportunity. So why not do it in the hospitality industry as well?
Do you think that this is something that happens in other industries? And I've only ever worked, well, not only ever, but most of my career has been in hospitality. You feel like hospitality are the ones that need to be sponsoring immigrants more, but actually there's barely anything that happens. Whereas in other industries, they're more okay with this.
Yeah, I don't know about every other industry, but because I came from the accounting world before I moved to hospitality. Even though hospitality has always been in my blood, I came in working in accounting, like firms like KPMG, PwC, this is Accenture, they sponsor visas for entry level role. They do sponsor visas. Visa is not an issue. But when you look at when you're saying this person, someone who just finished their career, just started their career, just finished school, and you're saying you don't want to take advantage, you don't want to give this person a long-term chance. You're taking something away from that person. And every time every company does that, there's a level of confidence every time you rejected that goes out of you. So the more we get people to support, these people really smart. Trust me, if you take really smart people, that we just need to give a chance, really.
Do you think it's ignorance really on the part of many companies that we just really don't know? We assume that it's really expensive. We assume that we'll have to put a lot of work into it, and actually it's just not worth it. Is that the problem?
Yes, I think so. I think people just feel like, no, that's too much headache, sponsorship, that's too much. But it's not expensive. It doesn't take too much. It's a one-off cost. Once you do it, you don't have to do it again. And what you're gaining is a valued long-term employee.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think work needs to be done to demystify the whole process to and you're obviously being a force for the greater good with this by coming on and talking about it. So thank you. And thank you for coming on the show. It's been enlightening. Really enjoyed the chat. You're certainly an inspiration. So thank you so much. Well, that's all we've got time for this week. We did a little bit of behind the scenes inspired by Diary of a CEO digging. And similar to Diary of a CEO, I think something like 90% of our viewers have not subscribed. So please do us a favor, and I've always wanted to say this, but hit that subscribe button and it helps us attract fantastic guests like Omoyeni. Thanks so much. See you next week.
Here we go.